The coffee shop was a pocket of stillness against the city noise. Steam curled from ceramic mugs, and the air held the heavy, toasted scent of ground beans. Mark sat in the corner booth, his laptop screen casting a soft glow across the table. He leaned forward, his hands steady as he navigated through a series of complex data charts. Across from him, Sarah watched the screen. Mark spoke with a rhythmic, measured cadence, outlining the core of his new venture. Every word was deliberate, backed by months of late nights and calculated projections. He did not look for interruptions. He was fully immersed in the mechanics of his plan, his focus absolute. He pointed to a specific growth projection on the display, his eyes bright with the clarity of his vision. He felt the weight of his ambition settling into place, a solid, tangible thing. He paused, his fingers resting on the trackpad, waiting for her to process the scale of what he had just laid out. The quiet of the shop pressed in, leaving only the sound of his own steady breathing and the distant hum of the espresso machine. He looked at Sarah, feeling the surge of purpose that had driven him to this point. He was ready for the next step. Sarah leaned back into the booth, the leather creaking softly under her weight. She did not look at the charts anymore. She picked up her drink, took a slow, deliberate sip, and set the cup down. The ceramic made a sharp, final click against the wooden table. Her expression remained neutral, unreadable. "People actually make money doing that?" she asked. Her tone was light, airy, almost dismissive. She tilted her head, watching him with a faint, thin smile. "Isn't that a bit risky? I honestly did not think that was your thing." The air in the booth seemed to thicken, turning cold and heavy. The ambient noise of the shop faded into the background, leaving only the sound of her voice ringing in the small space. Mark felt the shift instantly. The warmth of his ambition collided with the sudden sharp edge of her doubt. A prickle of heat crawled up his neck. His chest tightened. The urge to explain, to justify every hour he had spent building this dream, surged through him like a physical blow. He braced himself to defend the vision. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, uneven rhythm that demanded release. The words were already lined up in his throat, a rehearsed defense of his market research and his timeline. He could feel the familiar pull of the trap, the instinct to shrink his vision until it fit within the narrow parameters of her comfort. He opened his mouth, his jaw tight, ready to spill the justifications that would make the tension vanish. He looked at her, then down at the glowing screen of his laptop. The data points stared back, objective and unyielding. He saw the hours of his life reflected in the charts, and he saw the cost of trading them for a moment of her approval. He took a sharp, shallow breath, forcing his lungs to expand against the constriction in his chest. He clamped his teeth shut. The silence stretched between them, thick and demanding. He felt the heat in his face begin to recede as he consciously slowed his breathing. Mark did not offer a rebuttal. He did not force a nervous laugh to bridge the gap. He simply shrugged, his shoulders dropping into a relaxed, natural line. "Yeah, it is risky," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of any pleading or need for validation. "That is kind of the point." He turned his focus back to the screen, his gaze locking onto the data with renewed intent. The laptop screen cast a cool, pale light across his face. He began to type, the rhythmic tapping of keys filling the space. He did not check to see if she was watching. He did not wait for her nod of approval. Sarah remained still, her gaze fixed on him. She watched his hands steady, precise, moving with a calm rhythm. The sharp, expectant tension began to bleed out of the air. She looked at the side of his face, seeing a man who was no longer tethered to her opinion. The power dynamic in the booth shifted. The atmosphere inside the apartment was a stark departure from the quiet clarity of the coffee shop. When Mark stepped through the doorway, the air felt heavy, stagnant, and cold. Sarah was in the kitchen, her back turned to him. She moved with a jagged, unnatural rhythm. A glass hit the counter with a sharp, percussive crack. She did not turn around. She did not offer a greeting. She simply reached for a plate, her movements clipped and deliberate, as if every action were a measured strike against the silence. Mark stood in the entryway, watching the way her shoulders remained locked in a rigid, defensive hunch. He waited for a sign of recognition, a glance, or even a casual word, but none came. The silence in the room was not empty. It was dense, pressing against his eardrums like deep water. She moved to the sink, the water running in a sudden violent rush that drowned out the sound of his breathing. Every time she shifted, the floorboards groaned under her weight, a sharp contrast to the stillness she projected. She was building a wall, brick by brick, using the absence of sound to keep him at a distance. Mark took a step forward, but the air felt thick, almost physical in its resistance. He watched her hands, which were tight, knuckles white. Mark watched the steam rise from the sink, then finally spoke. His voice was steady, cutting through the hum of the running water. "What is wrong?" Sarah did not turn. She kept her gaze fixed firmly on the wall ahead, her body stiffening further. She let the silence stretch for 5 agonizing seconds before she finally murmured, "Nothing." The word was hollow, a flat stone dropped into a deep well. It hit Mark with the force of a physical blow. The old, familiar instinct flared instantly, a hot, sharp surge of anxiety in his chest. His heart rate spiked, thumping against his ribs like a trapped bird. He felt the reflexive, desperate urge to bridge the gap she had created. His mind raced, cataloging potential mistakes, searching for a transgression he hadn't committed. He wanted to apologize, to offer a soft word, to smooth over the jagged edges of her mood just to make the suffocating silence vanish. It was a well-worn path, a script he had played out 100 times before. He stood in the center of the room, caught in the gravity of her dismissal, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides as he fought the overwhelming pull to surrender. The apology sat on his tongue, a bitter, familiar taste. He felt the muscles in his throat tighten, ready to spill out a string of empty reassurances. He stopped. He forced his jaw to unclench. He drew a long, slow breath, pulling the air deep into his lungs until his chest stopped its frantic, shallow heaving. He focused on the sensation of his feet against the floorboards, pressing down, feeling the solid wood beneath his weight. He was not a culprit, and he refused to act like one. He let his shoulders drop, shedding the tension he had carried into the room. He did not step toward her to beg for a resolution. He did not offer a nervous, placating smile. He stood exactly where he was, his hands hanging loose at his sides, his gaze fixed on the space between them. The room felt smaller now, the air vibrating with the weight of his refusal to play the game. He felt the anxiety pulse once more, a final, desperate attempt to reclaim his old habits, but he exhaled it away. He remained a still, unmoving point in the center of the kitchen. He was no longer a mirror for her frustration. He was an anchor. He waited, his posture open and steady, refusing to be drawn into the chaos of her mood. Mark did not retreat. He took 2 deliberate steps toward the counter, closing the distance until he was within a few feet of her. He kept his voice clear and resonant, stripped of any defensive tremor. "It does not sound like nothing. Talk to me." He held his gaze steady on her profile, refusing to look away or soften his stance. He watched her shoulders, waiting for the inevitable reaction. He did not mirror her coldness, nor did he collapse into a flurry of justifications to fill the void. He simply waited, a steady, unmoving anchor. The seconds ticked by, heavy and deliberate. Sarah remained frozen for a moment, her jaw tight, her eyes still locked on the wall. Then, the resistance broke. Her posture, previously rigid and sharp, began to sag. She let out a long, slow exhale that seemed to drain the hostility. She turned, her movements no longer clipped or jagged, and met his gaze directly. The sharp lines of her face softened, the defensive mask slipping away. He had simply remained himself, and in that moment, the silence shifted from a weapon into a bridge. The air in the kitchen settled. The sharp, jagged energy that had dominated the room dissipated, leaving behind a quiet, steady stillness. Sarah looked at Mark, her eyes tracing the line of his jaw and the calm set of his shoulders. She did not speak, but the tension in her hands vanished. She moved away from the counter, her steps measured and deliberate, and stopped just inches from him. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm, a brief, grounding contact. Mark did not flinch, nor did he rush to fill the silence with words. He remained where he was, a solid, unmoving presence. He had navigated the storm without losing his footing, and in doing so, he had carved out a new space for their connection to exist. The frustration that had defined their interaction earlier was gone, replaced by a mutual recognition of his resolve. He watched her, his expression open and unburdened by the need for validation. He knew who he was, and for the first time, she saw it clearly. They stood together in the quiet, the weight of the past hour falling away. There was no need for apologies or grand declarations. The foundation had been tested, and it had held. Mark looked around the room, feeling the space not as a trap, but as a place of clarity. He had stayed true to his own path, and the result was a deeper, more resilient connection. He took a final, steady breath. The storm had passed,